What's happening? Happy Thursday night to every single one of you. Welcome into the party. Crafts and Kickoffs, week 17. Can you imagine? The penultimate week of the regular season in the NFL is upon us. It already started yesterday on Christmas. We'll get to those Christmas games. But of course, the first question I always ask you is, what are you drinking? What are you drinking tonight? And unfortunately, for the purposes of this podcast, I am drinking nice, purified water. Now, why am I drinking water when I love to usually lead the party? I'm on steroids. I got one more dose of steroids, had a jaw issue, some inflammation. Doctor gave me steroids, so I am left with water on this Thursday night. And I've had to drink water throughout my holiday. So it is what it is. Tomorrow is going to be, I think, a little bit more lively within my life when it comes to beverage options. But I'm drinking water tonight because I'm on steroids. I hope every single one of you enjoyed your holiday, had a fantastic Christmas. George jumps in. Georgie Pats says, "What's good, brother? How was your holiday?" It was good. It was quiet. I did a lot of work on 98.5 The Sports Hub here in Boston, so it was mostly quiet. Went to some family to see them on Tuesday night. Yesterday during Christmas, Kelly, my wife, and I, we kind of just hung out at the house, and it was pretty quiet Christmas given the steroid stuff and the work schedule. But I appreciate you reaching out. Amy jumps in, says, gearing up for a weekend of debauchery. So water as well. Hydrate. Bunch of party animals post-Christmas. Maybe some of you went too hard during the Christmas holiday. All right, let's jump in. Story number 5. Story number 5 this week. Let's talk about those Christmas games that happened yesterday. Both stunk. They stunk out loud. If you're an NBA fan and NFL fan like I am, it was rather obvious that the NBA had the much, much better slate. But we had 2 games, so let's talk about them. I think the lesson from yesterday that hopefully the NFL learns, which I don't think they will, is playing football games on a Wednesday is likely not the best idea. We've seen some bad football on Thursday nights. To kick it back to Wednesday, you had some issues. So the NFL got their money from Netflix. I'm sure they're very excited that they had 2 games on Christmas, but both games were absolutely miserable. And you have to wonder if at least some of that had to do with playing on Wednesday. Some teams are more equipped mentally and physically to handle 3 games in 11 days, for example, than other teams are. Kansas City got through it fine, right? Baltimore got through it fine. But you look at the other 2 teams playing on Wednesday, playing a bunch of games in a short amount of time, and they got croaked. So maybe, just maybe, don't sacrifice the product whenever you can just because you want to make an extra buck from Netflix and put these games on a Wednesday afternoon. So maybe the NFL will learn that lesson. Now, as far as what happened in these games, I start with Houston. Houston's offense. You know, everybody was talking about Bobby Slowick. Bobby Slowick was the hot name last year, right? Houston Texans offensive coordinator. C.J. Stroud had a fantastic rookie season. Slowick and Ben Johnson, everybody was talking about those 2 guys being head coaches. Neither guy became a head coach last offseason. Ben Johnson had an awkward, kind of weird interview, apparently, with the Washington Commanders. Bobby Slowick, he wasn't as active. So Slowick walks into this year with very high expectations. C.J. Stroud, you trade for Stephon Diggs, Tank Dell is healthy, and Houston's offense has been struggling. Down in Houston, they're dragging Bobby Slowick. They want him replaced. How quickly things change. You're supposed to be the next big thing. Now you might be out once this season is over. So the criticisms surrounding Slowick are not going to slow down. Yesterday's game was brutal for Houston. C.J. Stroud has been inconsistent this year. He has taken a step back from his rookie season. And to be fair to Slowick in Houston, we also have to recognize that Diggs got hurt several weeks ago. He's done for the year. We saw what happened with Tank Dell last weekend. Houston is scrambling for wide receivers to the point where they went out and claimed Deontay Johnson, who hasn't worked out anywhere the past couple of years. So Houston is struggling. The offense has not been as crisp as it was a year ago. The offensive line's been a little banged up. So we keep an eye on Bobby Slowick's future. That's one observation from Christmas. Another observation, and this is an observation we've had throughout this season, but it was really shown yesterday, is that Baltimore Ravens run game. That run game is devastating. I didn't believe Derrick Henry was going to be a great fit. I didn't feel like he was going to be a perfect fit with Lamar Jackson. I could have not been more wrong. Derrick Henry has been unbelievable this year. And Lamar is trying to battle Josh Allen for MVP. Lamar Jackson has put up some spectacular stats this year. Baltimore is as dangerous as they've ever been with Jackson and Henry. And my question remains, I think I asked this a couple of months ago, if not now, when for Lamar Jackson? It seems like everything has been put together for him, right? He's got Todd Monken, his offensive coordinator. He has made Lamar better. He has more weapons than he's ever had. Mark Andrews has really come on the last couple of months. Shad Bateman looking like the guy he was in college, playing much better this year. Zay Flowers is Zay Flowers. So if not now, then when for Lamar Jackson? I will keep asking questions until he goes into a playoff game. He has to make plays, and he consistently makes those plays. But for now, Baltimore, very dangerous, and that run game is where it all begins. We could talk about Lamar from the pocket and his receivers and the throws that he makes at times, but it all starts with that run game. It all starts with King Henry and the danger that is Jackson with his legs. Observation number 3 is an easy one. Kansas City wraps up the 1 seed in the AFC. They have been just crazy consistent, and they're adding pieces. They've been adding pieces for the last couple of months. They trade for DeAndre Hopkins. They pick up Juju Smith-Schuster off the scrap heap. They go out, get Kareem Hunt. Then they have Hollywood Brown return from injury. And with those pieces now, with Brown and Hopkins and Juju and Hunt and Xavier Worthy and Travis Kelce, you start to see this offense figure some things out. Still not super explosive, certainly not as explosive as we're used to with Kansas City, but they have done a great job. Brett Veach, the GM of that football team, has done a great job of adding pieces throughout the season to try to help Patrick Mahomes. Now they have a legitimate shot at a three-peat, which would be one of the most amazing things we've seen. When you think about it, the last team to repeat before the Chiefs did it was the Patriots back in 03-04. It had been, 20 years since we saw an NFL team repeat. Kansas City is getting closer to the doorstep of having a three-peat, which would be just unbelievable for them and Andy Reid. My last observation about that Christmas day that we had in the NFL. Pittsburgh looking like a fraud. Looking like a fraud. They have had 3 straight losses. When you look at who they've played the upper echelon of the NFL. Pittsburgh racked up some wins. Russell Wilson picked up some confidence early on when he came in. Arthur Smith did a good job with Wilson. They limited mistakes to begin his Pittsburgh tenure. But now as time has gone on, Wilson, and I said this going back several weeks ago, I was concerned that Russell Wilson would turn into a freaking pumpkin. And we have seen some pumpkin tendencies from Russell Wilson over the past couple of weeks. Some brutal turnovers. Absolutely brutal turnovers in the red zone. Now, you can blame Pickens a little bit for yesterday's pick, but still, Russell Wilson is starting to look like the Russell Wilson in Denver and the Russell Wilson towards the end of his Seattle career. Pittsburgh, meanwhile, as they faced better competition, as they had to play some of the best competition in the NFL, they have gotten their butts collectively whooped. Mike Tomlin knows it. They played Philly, Baltimore, and Kansas City. They lost all 3 games. They've lost all 3 of those games by at least 14 points. When you combine the scores of the 3 losses in a row, Pittsburgh has been outscored 90-40. They look like frauds. Unfortunate news for Steelers fans. Maybe they'll figure it out. But I don't feel great with Russell Wilson being the quarterback and then figuring it out against better competition. All right, let's get to story number 4. We run through those Christmas observations. Story number 4, as I drink my water, if you're wondering why, I'm on steroids, not anabolic. I'm not looking to get all pumped and jacked in the new year. I'm on steroids because I had some inflammation in the jaw. So I'm on water tonight. Hopefully, I should be back on the beer next week for the final regular season episode of this podcast. All right, story number 4. Pete Carroll wants back in the NFL. Now, before I get into PT Carroll, don't forget to do a couple things for us. Click that thumbs up if you're watching on YouTube. More likes means more eyeballs driving the traffic. We had our best week of this podcast last week by far. Big-time numbers, big-time views on YouTube, and it's all because of you and your support. So don't forget to hit that thumbs up, give us a like, throw a comment in, your Christmas observations. Let me know what you're drinking. Maybe it's water, maybe it's Pepsi, maybe it's beer, maybe it's wine. Let me know what you're drinking. So don't forget to throw that comment in. Likes and comments help us with the algorithm. And subscribe. We're trying to hit 5,500 subscribers. We are far away from that mark. Let's keep pushing. Let's tell friends, family, NFL fans to like, comment, subscribe. Hit the like as well on Twitter. Hit the like at Facebook and help us out. Spotify, Apple Pods, you know what to do. All right, back to PT Carroll. 2 weeks ago, it was all about Bill Belichick. Bill Belichick trying to find a way back into the NFL. We all know how that story ended. He ends up going to North Carolina. And now this week, it's Pete Carroll. Adam Schefter reporting that Pete Carroll is interested in the Chicago Bears head coaching job. Would a Pete Carroll return make sense? Yes, it would, depending on some of the circumstances. I think Pete Carroll has a young man's vibe, right? We've always said that. He has unbelievable energy. He tends to relate to players, even though they're much younger than he is. He communicates with them pretty well. So I think he could pull it off at 73 years old because he has that young energy and young life about him. He's had past success. He's won a Super Bowl. So if you want a veteran head coach who has won games and won a lot of games at the NFL level, you would be interested in Pete Carroll. But I would also say that Carroll needs the quarterback. I don't think you bring Pete Carroll in without having a sure grasp on who your franchise quarterback is. Chicago obviously wants it to be Caleb Williams. But I don't think that Chicago is the place for Carroll. I don't see that as a fit. I've been saying this for weeks, and I will continue to say this. Chicago, I believe, is going to hire an offensive coach to be their head coach. Everything I see, everything I read, everything I hear from Chicago is that they want an offensive coach to be the guy. As a matter of fact, last week, many people believe that Ben Johnson, OC of Detroit, auditioned for the head coaching gig because he ran that stumble bumble play from Jared Goff, throw a little bit of a trick play in there. And it certainly seemed like Johnson was auditioning for the head coaching job. So I think Chicago is going to go offense. If it's not Ben Johnson, it could be Cliff Kingsbury. Kingsbury has a history with Caleb Williams back in college. That would make sense. And Chicago's looking to build something. If you're looking to build something, I don't think you bring Pete Carroll in. I don't think you want to bring somebody in who's 73 years old, with all due respect, to handle a young quarterback, a younger team. I think you go young with the head coach. You want the head coach and the quarterback to grow together. You want them to be together for the next 10, 11 years in a perfect world. Carroll's not going to bring that. So I don't think Pete Carroll is the right fit in Chicago, but I could certainly see him be a fit in the NFL. The New York Jets would make some sense. Now, I know there's some history there, but if you think about it, you got Aaron Rodgers as the quarterback. You've got a veteran team. The Jets are looking to win right now. So that would be a more interesting fit to me and a better fit to me for Pete Carroll than Chicago would. All right, we'll get to story number 3 in a minute. Don't forget, what are you drinking? Let us know on this post-Christmas episode. I am drinking water because I'm on the roids. Some good quality H2O. All right, before getting to story number 3 this week, let me jump to a super chat here from Charlie. Charlie with the $10 super chat. Foothills Torch Lager. I'm in North Carolina. I have one for you. Thank you, Charlie. Have one for me. Have two for me if you want to have two for me. Do whatever you'd like, Charlie. I appreciate your support. Wishing Terry well, too. Yes, Terry went through, surgery. Our friend here, the podcast, with this podcast, my regular podcast, and the Cattle Show. She is a frequent contributor. She went through some knee surgery. So shout out to Terry. Happy holidays and New Year. Thank you for the 10, Charlie. It is very much appreciated. Burley, it was certainly not hemorrhoids. It was not hemorrhoids. As Jermaine Brown said, inflammation in my jaw. Tell the quick story before I get to story number 3 here. Saturday night, was out with Kelly at the bar watching sports, and all of a sudden, I started to feel like I couldn't quite open my jaw all the way. I had some pain. Figured it would go away. I've had some of that before. This was a little bit more pronounced. Went to bed Saturday night, woke up Sunday morning. Guess what? It didn't get better. It got worse. And so my jaw was giving me some major issues on the left side. We went to like a Zoom, right? We had to do a Zoom because it's the Sunday before Christmas. And so we did a Zoom with a dentist and went through the details. And he said, you have TMJ. So inflammation of the jaw, there's a disc there. It kind of slides out. It could cause inflammation. So I had TMJ. Great news was I popped the first 6 of those pills on Sunday. And really by Monday night, I was feeling better. So I'm good. Just made a funny face for all of you, but I'm feeling much better. I've done 8 hours of radio out of the last 3 days. So I'm on my way back, and I'm pretty much done with them after tonight. No more steroids after tonight. So tomorrow I should be back on track. Hopefully have a couple of beers, and the jaw is good. But thanks for the question. Prednisone, no. It was it's really difficult to pronounce. It's like methylprednisone. I don't know what it is. It begins with an M. Bloker, my 6-year-old just asked, who is Kelly? Kelly is my wife. All right, let's get to story number 3. Saquon Barkley chasing history. He's 268 yards short of Eric Dickerson's all-time single-season rushing record. Now, I am one of those people that like to point out that Dickerson had that record in 16 games. And that's a big deal because Saquon's going to have an extra game to break this record. I think that matters. If you have more games to break the record, that matters. If Saquon beats it in 16 games, if he runs for 269 this weekend and he beats Dickerson's record, then okay. But really, Dickerson doing that in 16 games, Barkley doing it in 17 games doesn't mean it's not impressive. It would be a hell of a feat for Saquon Barkley. But I just always believe we have to highlight the fact when a record is done in 16 games versus 17 games, because it's less football. Philadelphia has an outside shot at the 1 seed. This is where things get interesting. So they had a really bad loss last week against Washington. Washington turned the football over 5 or 6 times. I watched that game. Somehow, some way, Washington won the game. Jaden Daniels with the game-winning touchdown throw. Fantastic performance by him at the end. But the Eagles, they still have an outside shot of getting that 1 seed. They have to win out. They play the Cowboys this week, the Giants in week 18. Giants are dead. They're buried. They're the worst team in football. I've said this for the last, 2 months. They're going to end up with the number 1 pick. So the Giants should not be a problem. If the Eagles can beat the Cowboys this week, and both of those games are in Philly. So if they beat Dallas and they beat the Giants, they would need the Lions to lose to the 49ers, which I think is unlikely. They would also need the Vikings to lose to Green Bay this week. So the Eagles would need to win out. The Lions and the Vikings both would need to lose this weekend. And then the Vikings would have to beat the Lions in week 18. So there's a lot of things that would have to happen for Philadelphia to finish with the 2 seed. I think they're going to end up the 2 seed. I think they're going to end up the 2 seed. It's very unlikely they end up with the 1 seed is what he meant. Outside shot. I think they're locked in at 2 for all intents and purposes. So that begs the question, if you're the Eagles, and I want to let you in on this, send us a comment. What would you do if you were Philly? Let's say you're locked in at 2. You can't get the 1 seed. You finish through this weekend. You're looking at week 18. Do you play Saquon Barkley? Even though you can't help your playoff seeding, would you play Barkley to give him a chance to beat Eric Dickerson's record? Would you play Barkley week 18? If you played Barkley week 18, how much would you play him? Would you shut him down after a half? Or would you say, no, we're going to play him because we want to give him a chance to break the record, and to give him the best chance to break the record is to play him all 4 quarters? If it were me, I would sit Barkley. And I know that would be unpopular with some people, but I would sit Saquon Barkley. Jalen Hurts has a concussion. He's missed the last 2 days of practices. I would find it very difficult to believe that he will be playing this weekend, given he's missed the last 2 practices. The last thing you need is a Saquon Barkley injury. And if I'm just playing Barkley to break a record week 18, then I think that's silly. The offense relies on Saquon. They rely on the run game. Your starting quarterback is hurt with a concussion. You don't know when he's going to come back, how he's going to look when he comes back, if he comes back. The last thing I want to do is take a risk with Barkley so he can go out there and break a record. It's a great individual accomplishment, but Barkley, I would have to imagine, would agree with this. The number one priority is to win a freaking Super Bowl. And if I'm Philadelphia, that is my number one priority. With all due respect to Saquon, we love what you've done this year. We wish we could give you a better shot to break that record. But if we can't improve our seeding, we're not going to play you in week 18 so you can break the record, because the ultimate goal for you and for all of us is to win a championship. And you're not winning that championship. Philadelphia would have no chance in hell of winning a Super Bowl this year if Saquon Barkley is out. They need him. They need him. I would sit Saquon. Maybe Saquon would volunteer to sit and wouldn't have a problem with it. If Saquon wants to play, that can get dicey. It might depend on how close he is to the record. Again, he needs 268. He's 268 yards short of Dickerson's all-time single-season rushing record, so he needs 269. He's right there. He's on the cusp. You know, if you go for $140 both games, you break the record. But if this weekend against the Cowboys, Barkley runs for like 50, 60 yards, he runs for 70 yards, even if he runs for almost 100 yards, he's going to be 170 yards or so away from the record. And again, if you're not going to improve your seating, I would sit him. I would sit him. All right, let's get to story number 2. Story number 2, Aaron Rodgers. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to this podcast. All of those things help us, especially the likes and the comments, help us with the algorithm. If you're watching on Twitter, give us some love there. Facebook as well. Appreciate every single one of you and your support. Aaron Rodgers, I've said this now for a while. Aaron Rodgers, to me, is the LeBron James of the NFL. And what I mean by that is the passive-aggressive agenda pushing. LeBron has done this forever. He passive-aggressively sends his messages to the front office. He then runs to the media. His friends run to the media, and they always try to paint him as the innocent guy who's not really trying to work the politics behind the closed doors, but somehow, some way, things get leaked all the time with LeBron. Aaron Rodgers is the LeBron James of the NFL with the passive-aggressive stuff. He's had a miserable 2 years in New York, and he's starting to play the game with the Jets. What do I mean by that? Well, he was on the Pat McAfee show this week, and this is from ESPN's Rich Cimini. Here's what Rodgers said about being released, the possibility of that. Quote, being released would be a first. Being released by a teenager, that would also be a first. Now, he's obviously talking about the story that came out last week in The Athletic, which reported that Woody Johnson, the owner of the Jets, ends up taking advice from his teenage sons, Brick and Jack. Yes, one of his sons' names is Brick. So Rodgers said, so, hey, I'm open to everything, and I find the comedy in all of it. If that happens, hey, it's a great story. That's not as bad. That's, it's a joke. Okay, I get it. It's a jab, though. It's a jab to ownership in one way. But Rodgers wasn't done. Again, McAfee. One day, here's the story from Cimini. One day, after enjoying a laugh at the expense of Woody Johnson, Rodgers offered an unusually curt response Tuesday with the media when asked about Johnson, boosting the perception of a rift between them. Rodgers, discussing his future, said he must be, quote, in the plans of multiple people, starting with the ownership, unquote, for the Jets to retain him in 2025. He sidestepped a question on whether he believes Johnson wants him back. Rodgers said tersely, you should ask Woody. Has he had any conversations with Johnson about his future? One-word answer, no. And this is just typical Rodgers. This is what you sign up for. When you bring Aaron Rodgers into your program, this is the stuff that you've got to deal with. And it's gotten worse during these Pat McAfee appearances that he makes. He's going out there, he's trying to tell people what to do and how to do it as far as his teammates. And he tries to portray this incredible leader, and then he's skipping mandatory minicamp, and he's going on Pat McAfee and saying stuff that, sometimes does not help the football team. Like, this is just typical Aaron Rodgers. He's applying pressure to ownership. That's what he's doing. That's what this is all about. He's applying pressure to ownership, just like he did in the latter stages of his Green Bay career, applying pressure to the organization. Now, of course, Green Bay is owned by the fans, so a little bit of a different situation. But Aaron applied pressure on that front office, and the president of the organization in Green Bay, he applied that pressure. And this is what he does. And so he's doing it again, this time with Woody Johnson. And I'm not sitting here to defend Woody Johnson. Woody Johnson is one of the worst owners in sports. And he certainly meddles way too much. But my focus tonight is Aaron Rodgers. Because the last several years of his career are going to go down mostly known for this kind of stuff and not for his play. The media games and all these kinds of things, right? And you don't have to say anything. Rodgers doesn't have to say anything to the media. He can go on the Pat McAfee show. He can be asked the questions. He doesn't have to answer the questions. He doesn't have to be terse with the media. All Aaron Rodgers would have to say when asked all of these questions about his future is, I want to finish this season the right way. We got 2 games left. I'll talk in the offseason. I'll answer those questions more directly when my job is done here, when I finish out these next 2 weeks. But he can't help himself. He's got to say something, and he's got to take these little jabs and make these little jokes and again, push the envelope with ownership to try to either get more money, a better contract, or to get sent out of New York to where he wants to go, whatever the plan is. But he doesn't have to answer any of these questions. He could just say, I'm good. I'm focused on football right now. I got 2 more weeks. I'm focused on 2024 and closing this season out the right way. But if you notice, Rodgers never really comes out directly and asks to be sent away, right? He doesn't ask out directly. He didn't do it in Green Bay. I don't think he's going to do it in New York because he wants to pin it on ownership. He's not going to come out and say he wants out, but if he does get traded, if he does get released, then he's going to put that on the owner. And if he plays great, then he says, hey, look, they got rid of me. That's their fault. He's just a headache. He's just a headache. Hope you all had a fantastic Christmas. Ho, ho, ho. Getting ready for the new year now. Drinking water tonight. Unusual for me. I'm on steroids, so I've told the story already. You can rewind and check it out earlier. This is actually the second episode of this podcast that I ended up drinking water. The very first one that I did, week 1 of the NFL season, I had the vid. So I had the vid and I was on water. So this is actually the second time in the 17 weeks that I'm on water. Not the essence of the show, not the plan, but here we are. Let me know what you're drinking. Like, comment, subscribe. All right, let's get to story number 1. Mike McCarthy and the Dallas Cowboys. I'm not a Mike McCarthy guy. If you have listened to me, whether it was down in Virginia Beach, if it was out in Sacramento, if it's here in Boston, if it's podcasts, wherever, I think all of you know by now, I'm not a big Mike McCarthy guy. I've never been a McCarthy guy. But I'm going to give him his flowers. He's been really good this year. And I think Mike McCarthy has made a statement. And he has made his case to keep his job in Dallas. The Cowboys are 7-8. Now, maybe Cowboys fans aren't happy about that because they're not going to get a great pick. But 7-8, given the circumstances, that's actually damn impressive by Mike McCarthy and that Dallas coaching staff. And don't forget, they lost their defensive coordinator, Dan Quinn, who went to Washington. They brought in Zimmer, right? Zimmer moved over, be the new DC. And it's been a really good job by McCarthy to keep the Cowboys competitive. And not only competitive, winning their fair share of games. If you told me a month and a half ago that the Cowboys would be 7-8. They still have a chance to have a winning record, which angers me because I think it was the over 9.5 Dallas, under 11.5 San Francisco. I had that 2-team parlay in my future bets before the season kicked off. And now watch, Dallas will end up like one win away, one short of that, given all these injuries, which we'll get to in a minute. But if you told me a month and a half ago that the Cowboys would be 7-8, given what they're dealing with, I would have called you crazy. I would have said there's no way they're 7-8. There's no way they have a chance to have a winning record this year. They do. And I give a lot of credit to McCarthy. Dak Prescott, your starting quarterback, he played 8 games this year. He gave you half of a season. In the beginning of the year, he was brutal. Your running backs are Rico Dowdle and Zeke Elliott. Zeke Elliott was almost kicked off the team just a few weeks ago for missing, meetings and all that stuff. So they don't have a top back. Their starting quarterback played half a season. Brandon Cooks, who is really the number 2 receiver, he played a half a season so far. He's played 8 games. Your best player on offense is CeeDee Lamb. He's running around with like one arm. He's been hurt for the last few weeks. He looks just miserable physically. He's been, don't get me wrong, producing, playing great for what's going on with him, but it just looks like a miserable experience for him to get through these games. So CeeDee Lamb's playing hurt. Cooks has played 8 games. Dak played 8 games this year. Your running back room is hilarious, pretty much. Micah Parsons, one of the best defensive players in football, he missed 4 games. So he missed a quarter of the season. So Dak played half a season. Cooks has played half a season. Lamb's hurting. Parsons missed a quarter of the season. And the injuries don't stop there for Dallas. Trevon Diggs, he's on IR. Zach Martin, he's on IR. DeMarvion Overshown, he's on IR. Deron Bland has played 5 games this year. I mean, you talk about Diggs, Bland, Martin, Overshown, Parsons, Dak, Cooks. We're not just talking about players being hurt. We're talking about their best players being hurt. And they're still 7-8 and have a chance to finish above 500. And when you think about McCarthy's situation, he's a lame duck coach on the final year of his contract. That speaks volumes of McCarthy and what he's been able to do in that room. Again, I'm not a big Mike McCarthy guy, but I'm fair. I give credit when people deserve credit, and Mike McCarthy deserves a lot of credit for what he's done with this football team this year. Last year of his contract, he's gone through all of these injuries, including his starting quarterback. He could have tapped out. The team could have tapped out, but they haven't. And that shows you that whatever he's doing in that locker room, Mike McCarthy has the Cowboys fully engaged. They're fully engaged. They have not quit on the season. They're not quitting during games. And we all know the contract status of the head coach. But for him to continue to get buy-in through all of these injuries, it's not the reason to keep a job. But it does say something about McCarthy's ability to communicate with his team and also as a coach to adjust. He's the offensive play caller. He's calling the plays. He loses his quarterback in the middle of the year. His best weapon is all banged up. His 2 receiver has played only 8 games. One of the best offensive linemen they have had in the league in the past 20 years with Zach Martin is on IR. And McCarthy is doing enough without a scary running back. He's doing enough as a play caller to also win football games. So this is an impressive job by Mike McCarthy. It somewhat bugs me to say it, but again, I got to be fair and I got to be honest. He's doing a damn good job. Never thought Dallas would be in this spot. And I think he's going to get extended. I mean, based off this year, it's tough, right? If you're Jerry Jones and you're saying, and I would have moved on from McCarthy already, but if you're Jerry Jones and the idea was we're going to give Mike one more shot. He's got 1 year left on his deal. We're going to give him one more chance. Let's see if we can make a run this year. Then all of these injuries happen. But you see this team continue to play hard. You see this team continue to win, given the circumstances. You see McCarthy and how he's adjusted with his offense with all these injuries. And it's pretty difficult to say that they should fire McCarthy if this was a prove-it year given what they've done with what he's had to deal with. Now, still not a huge fan. I still think he has a ceiling. I would take many other coaches over him in the NFL. And, this might not end up well a year or two down the road, but it's very difficult to say goodbye to him with what they're doing and what he's been able to accomplish. The team is aging. Parsons is coming up. He's going to be a free agent. So they've got some money that they got to deal with. Jerry Jones did not want to spend a lot of money this past offseason. Cowboys fans were upset. But everything involved, I got to give him credit. Mike McCarthy's done a pretty damn good job in Dallas this year. 7-8, could finish 9-8. That would be a great story for McCarthy and the Cowboys. If they finished 9-8, now they got to play the Eagles this weekend. Difficult task. It's in Philly. But to even have a chance to finish at 9-8. Don't forget to like. Don't forget to comment. And don't forget to subscribe. The likes and the comments on YouTube, they help us with the algorithm. We're trying to build this audience, build this base, build this support group and this party group. So don't forget to subscribe, click that notify bell. Hope every single one of you had a fantastic Christmas. Heading towards New Year, we're back next Thursday night, 7 p.m. live right here on this YouTube channel. Crafts and Kickoffs, Week 17. Everybody enjoy the rest of the action this week. And then next week, we got Week 18 to talk about. And, of course, we'll most likely look at the playoffs and how things might line up. Until then, be well. I appreciate every single one of you and all